All
All right.
right. The first step that I always do in this little presentation, demo, workshop, whatever we're going to call it here, is I dive into the front ends and kind of discuss how to build the integration starting with the inside, because most of the time that's how this is going to be handled. So if we jump into the customization section, you have I'm guessing all of you guys have seen this before and kind of dove into this. Whether you guys have an extensive knowledge of it or not, that won't matter because we're going to dive into that today. But we'll start over on the right side here with the artifact types. So artifact types, we have a list of artifact types that come default in the system. And you can always add your own if you want to. These artifact types can be used to look through different threat services so that you can correlate information such as IPs to blacklists or to any other kind of domain bad domain or something like that using the threat services that are available in the admin tab, which I will show you guys here. These are the threat sources I was talking about. So these are the ones that are out of the box. And then we do have some other integrations that can be added to these that'll actually expand this list as well. But these are the threat sources I was referring to for the artifact types. So those can be used to do that. They can also be used to correlate incidents. So if you've got two artifacts that are the exact same in two different incidents, those two incidents will then automatically be correlated together, unless, of course, you actually turn that correlation off here. And then, of course, you can also turn threat scan off as well, so you don't send things to the threat sources. But you've got those kind of options here within the artifact types. Next, we'll move on to the incident types. Of course, you've got all different kinds of incident types. Again, these are the ones that are all built into the system. You guys can add your own or edit some of these yourself if you want to hide them or whatever so that you can't see them and just use your own incident types. And the phases and tasks, these are, of course, within the incident, you've got your incident types. You've got or within your incident, you have your phases, which are like the engage and the detect, analyze, these main headers basically here. You can create your own phases if you want to, if you don't like the phases that we have laid out, which plenty of people do that, and then plenty of people also keep the same phases that we already have and just add different tasks to them. The tasks are the options below down here, which basically are each step that needs to be completed to close out that task, or to close out that incident, I mean. So when it comes to the tasks, you can add the tasks in here, and I'll just go into an edited one here. You can include the instructions of what needs to be completed to complete that task. And then you can add additional information here, such as creating a due date once these tasks are kicked off, turning them on and off. You can make them required or optional. So you've got that kind of customization down here. And then down here in the layout, you can add different fields from the incidents themselves so that you can, if you click on one of these tasks within the incident, these options will be available for you to change directly in that task itself. All right, so now we come into the app building section. So every app or every integration that is going to be built is going to use a message destination. Essentially what a message destination is it's a queue where it posts everything that needs to be worked on that gets sent from a function down to this queue. So that sits in the queue, and then your function will connect to that queue and actually pull that information down, process it, and then do whatever that function is going to be doing for you. So that's kind of a rough definition, or I mean, kind of an exact definition of what a destination is. And just want to mention here, as we're going through here, if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out and just ask. So the message destination is the final destination outside of the function or the integration of the app itself. So the next step up would be the function. In a function, this is essentially where you're defining, you're going to be defining where or which queue to be using. So that'll be defined here in the message destination that you created already. And then you're going to define the inputs. So you can create fields over here, which are considered input fields. These input fields are different from an incident field. So within a workflow, you can actually define them to say this incident field equals this workflow field, or this function field or input field. But they don't mean anything until you actually define them in the workflow. So with the input fields, what you do is you're defining what information you are actually going to be trying to pass to your function or to your app, right? So when you define that in here, you can define that by what kind of field it is. So we have the same types of fields that you have in an incident field. And then you have the field name, and then you can actually define if it's required or optional. And then you can also give it a tooltip as well so you can remember what that field is. So in here is where you're going to define the field. After you create that field, you just drag it over and drop it into your inputs. And essentially what that's going to be doing is saying that this field is something that is going to be passed to that function or that integration that you're building. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a simplified explanation of it. These can get kind of in depth. You can have a ton of inputs per function, or you can have very little inputs per function. You guys have any questions so far?
They're forming still.
Sounds good.
I would add one, the destinations, and my apologies if you had already mentioned that, Nick. Is that bi-directional or just more of a outbound type of thing?
So when you're building the message destinations, you can actually define if you're going to be expecting a response from the field or from the message destination, which essentially would be it handing information back. So that the results that that you might play with in the workflow to get the exact information that you're looking for. That's kind of what it's asking here is that information, is it going to be responding with additional information, or am I just handing this off and then not ever expecting any kind of response because it doesn't reach back to the message destination at all?
Okay, and that acknowledgement can be more than just a yes/no acknowledgement, right? It can have data
Yes.
embedded.
Yes, that is the results. So essentially, when you're in a workflow, most of the time you're going to have if it's giving you information back, you're going to have a results dictionary essentially that's giving back to you. And that results usually has a couple of basic things like was this successful, yes or no, or true or false kind of thing. And then so you can build your script in the workflow to say if results successful equals true, then do this, and that'll allow you to separate if it was a successful communication with the app host or not, kind of thing. But inside there, you'll also have results and I think it's called content or something. It's been a while since I've messed with a ton of integrations, but essentially you'll have something within there called results content or something like that, where that's where all the data that you're expecting to get back would come back. So if it's an LDAP request or something like that, you'll have the content, and then you'll have the user information that you were looking up or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yep. Cool. Okay, got it. Thanks.
The other aspects on the message destination, where you have two types, you have a topic and you have a queue as to how you would actually send those messages out to do something. And I think the inbound would be more with the queue type, where we will be polling to see the results that are typically for all of our integrations and everything that we do right now, we use topic. We do not use the queue format.
Gotcha.
To go a little bit deeper, but not knowing if this helps or not, the queue format would be more where we would have, I guess, a lot of things subscribing to that message destination. So it would be a scenario where it might be all of your endpoints are actually subscribed to a queue to take some sort of action or have some flag or notation added to it. And essentially the difference is the behavior is on a topic. When it's picked up off of the queue, there's an acknowledgement and then it's removed from the queue. Whereas the other flavor is more like UDP type of communication where it just sits there and it waits for whoever picks it up to do something with it, right?
If I could ask that from a different approach on the question. So, and I'm trying to help both myself and more importantly, Tristan kind of get clarification as, so if, let's use the example of, QRadar integration with SOAR, right? In order for a QRadar offense to kick off an incident in SOAR, right, we would use basically our AppHost plugin, right? In order to, and that's all pre-built for us, right?
Yep.
Is that
Right.
okay? So we got that. So if there's an app integration for an existing thing, then that should be handled for them. But otherwise, if you've got to build this yourself into an app, if we didn't have an app for that, where this is all automatically done for us, then we're saying that it's going to use this this message destination place to initiate that, right?
Well, the message destination itself is
Exactly.
the message destination itself is usually used for the apps where it's the resilient or SOAR in this instance would um, write to the message destination the information from the function that the function is expecting or that the app is expecting from the function. So it would write that to a message destination, and then the app would actually subscribe to that message destination. And whenever something's written to that queue, it would pull that information and do what it needs to do. Does that make sense? So I think we've covered message destinations. I've covered functions. Do we have any questions on functions?
No.
I guess if you were at the message destination, if you could just go to the message destination and click like a new one there. There was one part that I was talking about. So you see, there's a type there that's going to be either queue or topic. Yeah, that's the part that I was alluding to.
Okay.
And typically everything that you're going to do here is going to be queue,
Yep.
which is that single transaction that is going to execute. It's not the topic where it says sitting there waiting for any of them. And where it says expect acknowledgement, that's the part that ties in where your job is put on that message destination, and when it's successfully executed, it is removed from that message destination.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Is that part clear?
And essentially, if you're expecting a message, or if you're not expecting a message destination, it gets put on that queue. As soon as that data gets pulled, it gets removed from the queue and it's done. If you're expecting an acknowledgement, then it stays on the queue until the app actually acknowledges the response and finishes the response.
Makes sense. So for most integrations, we'd be just using the queue type.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Oh, and of course in there, make sure that you add whichever user you're going to be adding here. So if you've got an API user that you're adding to be able to build your integrations out or whatever, you need to make sure you add that. When you actually import a integration into or an app into your system, the API that it creates, the API key and that it creates will actually automatically be added. So you don't have to do that when you're importing one, but if you're actually building it out, you will have to add this in so that you've got a user that can listen to that queue basically.
In best case, would the best practice be for each custom integration have a different user API key?
So if you've just got one that so the way that I typically do it, if I'm just using this to build an integration, I'll create one key that's just my integration builder key. Then that one just gets assigned to whatever I'm doing. Whenever you're importing a new integration or a new app, it actually automatically has a file in it that says this user needs these permissions or this integration needs these permissions. And so it'll actually go out to your API. It'll create a new API user specific to that app with the permissions that it needs, and then it will link that API user to the message destination that it creates while importing your new app. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So then we covered functions, and now we'll jump into the workflow here. So essentially with a workflow, this is where you're actually going to be building step by step what's going to happen when this gets kicked off, right? So in here, you've got all kinds of options. You're going to start out with your starting position down here. And from here, you can either add things by pulling them in like that. But if you pull them in, then you actually have to link them yourself. Or the other option is if you actually just click on whichever thing you're planning on branching from, you can actually just select what you want to do down here. So if I wanted to add that XOR or the exclusive gateway there, I can just click the exclusive gateway and add it, and it automatically links it up here. So a couple of different things that we have here. We've got different gateways that you can add. You've got the exclusive gateway, which is your OR. So if you want it to go one direction or another, you can do this here. And then essentially what you would do is maybe, you're going to run one function here, or you're going to run another function here. And then what you can do here is you can actually just click on this. Click on this, and it'll bring up this this box here, the condition builder, and then you can create whatever condition you want to decide here. And then of course you add a name. So this could be maybe if it's a false positive, you want it to go one way, or if it's a false negative, you want it to go another way. And that kind of functionality is built into the platform where you can do stuff like that. Of course, you can do scripting. So you can actually script something out if you want to do a little bit more advanced stuff. You've got the scripting box here. Or if you just want to say maybe like incidents, let's do, there you go. So incident disposition, if it's a true incident or not. So if this is confirmed, then you can say confirmed, or if it's unconfirmed, that can be your, this is a false positive one here. So at a certain point within your incident, if it hits this point and you say you want to just check, hey, is this incident confirmed or not confirmed at this point? If it's confirmed, then take these additional steps. If it's unconfirmed, then we'll go ahead and close the incident. So you can do that all from a OR response here. The other thing you can do is you can do an AND, which is this bad boy here. And essentially this says when you hit this function, or when you hit this gateway, you can branch out and you can have 3 or 4 different things, and you want all of them to execute. So now you're branching out and you're saying, okay, complete all of these tasks. And then you've got we've got the XOR as well. XOR, I'm not too familiar with a use case for this. Craig, if you've got a use case, go for it. Otherwise, it's the exclusive OR option there. So
I think I'm trying to think of use that in 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 some use cases internally. And my understanding, the way it really works is like it's almost like an any or any of these conditions true, run it.
yeah, I think that's how it is. It's been a while since I've used XOR. I use OR and all the time, but XOR is one that I don't use very often. So that's in there as well, though, if you want to use something like that. Other options we've got user tasks. So earlier when I was showing you the phases and tasks, if you want to add a new task at a certain point, this is actually how we build SOPs very often for demos and stuff like that. Even within the environments, if you're wanting to build out an SOP, you can do that by showing every step. So you can have, once this step is completed, add these 3 tasks. Now these 3 tasks need to be completed before you can move on. So once, an analyst completes those 3 tasks, then it'll move on to another point, which would be adding more tasks and stuff like that, so that you can kind of force the analyst to, take every step appropriately at the time that it's appropriate, instead of skipping through tasks or anything like that. This will actually allow you to only populate the tasks when that user should be completing the tasks. So that's one way we use those, but you can add those tasks here. You can also add additional workflows. So if you've got another workflow you want to link to, so say you're going through a system intrusion workflow, and there's compromised credentials, and you've got a compromised credential workflow that you now want to kick off as well. Then you can go ahead and you can add that workflow to this, where it automatically adds that workflow to the workflow you already have being handled. So you can do stuff like that. You can kick off scripts, which we'll cover scripts here in just a little bit. So scripts are added on they've got anything that is an automation is going to be listed as yellow. So a script is automatically going to run, and that's just going to process information. You've got your functions here, which are going to run an integration automation. So I obviously already added the functions here. And then the last thing is, if you just want to send something to a message destination itself, you can do that as well. And again, this is an automated thing, so you're handing information to the message destination to have some kind of automation complete. That was a quick overview of this. Do you guys have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. The final thing you'd want to do on every workflow is you would want to add this big fat circle here, and that is your endpoint, and basically saying once the function hits this location, the function is closed and complete. So you would just link that at the end, and that's closing your incident out. So with the workflows, you can also define them as where this will flow from. So if it's going to be kicked off at the incident level, at the task level, note level, milestone, artifact, attachments, you can kick it off from any of these. And we'll touch more on this information when we get further down into the rules section. So before we move on, adding that information, any questions?
Nope.
Sounds good. All right. Jump here into scripts. Scripts is literally just that. It's a place where you can write Python scripts. Again, we can add it to kick off from any of those object types, including an email message destination. So oftentimes, if you've got your email queue set up, the emails will get dropped into the SOAR inbox, and they will show up in the message destination queue, or this inbox up here. And you can create a script that will allow you to parse emails to either create new incidents, or you can add them to an already existing incident. So you can add additional information. So you can do stuff like that. Down in here, that you can write your function. Now, this is not a full version of Python 3. You can do anything you can do in the native Python 3 as long as you're not using a new module. When it comes to modules, we only allow for a select few modules to be imported. And basically the reason that we don't allow everything is because we don't want you to have scripts that can interact with the operating system itself, which could alter and change the operating system and compromise the security of the system itself. So we do allow you to do certain manipulation of data in here, such as, like I said, the parsing of emails. You can import re for doing parsing. You can import date time as well to convert dates and time to the appropriate variables so that they can be inputted into the date time variables. So that's kind of the function that we allow in here. I don't know all of the things that we support, but there's a list out on the community. But that is essentially where we would be hitting on there. Any questions about scripting?
No, just a general comment. This is usually the point of contention for me, because it's like, you know, when I'm so used to just being able to write Python script, right?
Yep.
And it does exactly what I want it to do. But now this is this goes back to the whole point of having to use this workshop.
Yeah.
I have to do a lot more just to be able to make a simple API call.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, and I understand the frustration to that. But at the same time, when I was working for Ohio State, my thing that I came back to was, okay, but if something were to get compromised and somebody's credentials got compromised, somebody was able to log into the system, somebody could write a code to write in a backdoor basically into our resilient system. So even if we came to the point where we were able to change that person's credentials so that they couldn't get back in any longer, well, they also wrote a script that we didn't think to go look for that is allowing a backdoor into the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, it makes sense. It's just like,
yeah, yep. Yep, it's definitely more work, but in the long run, it also, I think it helps out as well, and improves the security of the system. So.
Yeah, I guess one other way to say that is the scripts that you have there in that scripting dialog box. Those are going to impact or manipulate objects on the resilient system itself. So they are protected so that the platform itself will stay stable. You're very limited in the libraries that you can bring in to do those things. So the scripting engine is so that you have a means of touching the API to take any action, and like anything you could click on with your fingers, you could essentially do with that scripting interface at that point. And that's the level of safe access we wanted to provide.
Yep. Any other questions for scripts before we move on?
Not this time. Thank you.
All right. So the next step here is the rules. So we have a list of rules in here by default, but when we talk about rules, there's two different types of rules. There is automatic rules, which all of these are automatic rules. And then there's also a manual or a menu rule, also known as a manual rule. Typically what the menu rules are is within an incident, which actually, I think I got an incident yet created. Let's do. Create a test incident here. All right, so within an incident, whenever you've got a menu rule, you've got these 3 dots or the vertical ellipses over here. You can click on that, and then you'll have a list of actions that can be kicked off here. Those are rules that you're kicking off from a menu item. Automatic rules are just that. Once the condition is met, it automatically launches it and kicks off whatever workflow, scripts, change, whatever the rule is doing, which we'll dive into that in a second. But when I mentioned earlier that you can kick things off from an incident level or a task level or whatever level, you have the levels that I was referring to are, if I wanted to kick something off from the incident level itself, those are pretty much any of the incident fields. If any of the incident fields change, that can change the condition. And in a menu item, when the condition is met, that is when the menu item is presented to the user. So in automatic, as I said, when the conditions are met, it automatically just does it. In a menu item, when the conditions are met, it will actually show that menu item up here. So for instance, in an incident, it'll be under actions up here. If it's a task, it will show those down in here, off this ellipses here. If it's an attachment, which I don't have an attachment here, but it would show that vertical ellipses there too. You've got notes whenever you add a new note. So again, vertical ellipses over here, you can kick off a task based on that. We've also got data tables, which I don't think I've got any data tables in this environment just yet, but you can kick things off from each row of a data table. You can kick things off from artifacts. So if I add let's add an IP here. Oops, that's not an IP. IP. So just add a IP here. Again, actions. So you can kick off different things over here. So you've got all these different options where you can kick things off from different locations. So if we come back into the customizations, we're going to see that those rules here, here's some automatic ones. We'll go into the menu item one. So menu item one, again, here's where you can kick off the object types. So if I choose an incident object type, then when I come to the scripts and when I come to workflows, the only ones that I'll be presented with if I'm going to kick off a workflow is anything that is a incident object type in that script or workflow area. Same with scripts, which if I wanted to run a script, I can come in here and run a script. And then I have the option as well of I can just change different things. I can add tasks if I wanted to, or I could set fields. So I can set any of the incident fields to be whatever. So I can change the state if I wanted to, I'm from Ohio, so we'll go ahead and set this into Ohio. If I can find Ohio, come on, videos, there it is. So I can change the state to Ohio if I wanted to. So that's kind of what you can do with rules. And then obviously you can create your own names. I know that when we do something within a demo environment, we do tech : at the beginning if it's an automation. If it's an SOP, we do SOP : and then whatever the name is for the SOP. So that's kind of how we do our names. Obviously names is up to you guys when you guys create your own instances and stuff. So that's kind of the rules. Did you guys have any questions on rules?
Nope.
Oh, I did not touch on conditions. So in conditions, you can add a condition. If you want to add multiple conditions, you can add multiple. And then if you add many conditions, you can also do if all conditions are met, then this would kick off, or if any condition is met, you can kick off, or if you want to do something more advanced where you're defining like if one like what it's got right here. If one is valid and or 2 and 3 are valid, you can kind of do that. So you can kind of build out your conditions a little bit more complex if you wanted to do that too. All right. Now, rules is done. No more questions, right? No questions for rules.
Not at the moment.
Cool. And layouts is very straightforward. I'm guessing you guys have already messed around with these. You can build your new incidents, which is that incident thing that I hit up here and created that new incident. You can create that layout up here. You can go and create each tab layout in here too and add, your fields or your data tables or, your static views. You can also add different types of blocks. So you can add HTML or header information sections that have variables for when they, or conditions for when they actually will display. And then you can do your close, which is essentially when I'm in an incident and when I'm in an incident and I'm ready to close the task out or the incident out, kind of what is displayed here to finalize that incident. So any fields maybe that you want to have closed before the incident is closed, you can have those populated here as well, just to demonstrate, that these need filled out before you close the incident. So you can do all that there. Not going to touch on this too much because that's probably about all you guys need. You guys have probably already messed around with that yourselves. So on the customization section, do you guys have any questions?
Nope, not right now.
Cool. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and we only have about 12 minutes left here. So I'll do the final things on the front end to allow us to start building integrations on the back end side. But first, we're going to jump into the administrative settings and we're going to come over to here to apps. If you guys have already added your AppHost, then you guys won't really need this. But if you guys haven't set up the AppHost just yet, what you're going to do is you're going to come over here to the apps. We're going to hit add. We're going to call this, we'll just call it IBM apps. I don't care about a description, and we're going to hit add. Now, when it comes to this information here, it is best to copy this out because once you hit complete on here, you can't see this again. If you need to reestablish connection or something like that with your AppHost, you're actually going to have to renew that that connection and create basically a new AppHost within the AppHost environment. So let me go over here. Oops, where's that out there? All right. All right. So from here, we're going to add or run the command sudo manage AppHost with a capital A and a capital H. And then we're going to do install. Ask for my password again. And then it'll ask for that pairing information. So from here, you can actually just go ahead and paste that, that pairing information directly in there and then hit enter. And it'll ask you if the key is all right or if the SSL key is all right. And just type in yes. And that installation will take place there. So now we can come back over here and we can hit complete. It has not fully paired yet, or it's not connected yet. It's paired but not connected. So it's going to do some stuff to finalize that setup on the back end here. And then once it's done, it'll actually pop up with a version and it'll demonstrate the CPU usage here as well. Once you've got that installed, then what we're going to be able to do is we're actually going to be able to go to install here and we'll be able to add any package we want. So for me, I've got all these apps here. Oh, you can see it just kicked off over here. So it is connected now, and it's running, CPU is running a bit high right now, but I think that's just because it's still doing final setup. So that should come back down. Normally it runs at about 11%, I've noticed, so should be all right once it comes back down. But when you download apps from the App Exchange, which you guys know about the App Exchange, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So the App Exchange, when you download those, when you've got the integration server, you see these zip files. You open one of the zip files up and you pull out the tar file, right? With the integration server, the app server, which you can actually do is just go ahead and we'll do the geocoding here. You can just add the zip file itself, and when you hit upload, it's going to build this package out for you within the environment. So this will tell you where or what all it's creating for you, and then when you hit install, it'll go ahead and add all that stuff for you automatically. Once you get here, your customization tab here will show you again everything that it added. You can come over here to the configuration tab, and you've got all of this stuff here, including your app config, which is based on just this app alone. So you can click on the app, and now you can actually see all of the app configurations. Like I said, this is only for this app, so that's why you're only going to see the app name here, and then you'll see the resilient section here, where before, when you had an integration server, you would see all of the integrations listed all the way down through this. So you've got this all set up. If you want to add, like right here, it's asking for an API key. Obviously, you don't just want to write your API key into here in clear text. What you can do is you can actually add a secret. You can just create a name and then add special value and hit create. And then when you actually want to add this in, so say you want to, we'll just add it in here to the proxy section. What you'll do is you'll hit copy over here, and when you paste this in, it'll actually add the variable for that key, that essentially the res key file, so that it knows to fill it with that information. So that's kind of how you can do that. Down here, you can also select which app host you want to run it on, and you can run by hitting test config. Obviously, this isn't set up now, so it's going to fail for me. But once you run that and everything's looking good, then you can hit save and push changes. And then when you come back over here, it should be, yeah, it's selected the right app host, but you can see it's not actually deployed yet. So you can just come down here and hit deploy, and that'll actually push it out to the app host and deploy that to your system. So you'll be able to start using this app. So that kind of covers the app side of, or the app host side of the integration. Do you guys have any questions that you want to touch on from here?
Not really.
At this point, though, we are done with our time, or we have hit our max time here. So the next class that Joe sets up, we will actually dive into the back end and start working with the API and working with building out, your Python environment and everything like that. So the plan that I have is, if you guys want to follow along, I already sent out those notes for playing with the API. So you guys can follow along with that. If you guys want to do it yourself, what we'll do is I will expect you guys to have Python already installed, and I use Python. I'm using the newest version of Python, so you should be able to install the newest version of Python as well. And then if you guys want to follow along, then have that stuff installed, and we can start walking through the steps that I've got. If you guys just want to watch and watch later, we will of course record it and get that out to you.
Sounds good.